Yes, we are here. Ow now, brown cow. Marco laughing at my vocal exercises. I do. I can't help it. Marco, I've been doing terrestrial radio for the better part of over 20 years. It's the longest commitment of my life, and I've committed it to local AM radio. Marco D'Amico and Shaun Starr, welcome to the Starr and D'Amico show. I'll let you decide who's who. There's Marco representing the Bald Brotherhood, representing Strong, president of the Montreal Canada chapter. Marco, welcome back from California, one of my favorite states in the continental U.S. I know you're at Newport. How awesome. Hey, Newport Beach. And did you take my recommendation? Did you go to C's Candy Store?
I don't do candy.
What does that mean? I don't do fun things.
No, I did some fun things, but
yeah, I'm sure you did.
Look, listen, guys, you see me stand while I do a podcast, right? There's a reason for that. I'm an excited person as is. You put me on candy and I'm a freaking 5-year-old. I'm starting to bounce off walls. Like I stay away from sugar in a professional setting at all.
What about your wife? She likes the sweet things. She married you, for Christ's sake. She likes you.
Jesus. No, we went to Disneyland instead.
Oh, nice. Hey, you want a fun hack to remember the difference between Disney World and Disneyland? You ready for this one?
Yeah,
so Disneyland, L.A.
Yeah.
Disney World, O.R. for Orlando. There's a surefire way to always remember which one is in which state.
I've done both in the last year. I've done both in the last year now, so we're set. Fun tidbit. We went and It's a Small World ride, and the damn thing broke down.
No.
So we're stuck on this boat in the middle of the, like, I guess whatever you want to call it, ride. And you have a bunch of these Chucky-like puppets singing, "It's a small world after all." But it was on cue for like 45 minutes because we got stuck. I was about to swim to shore.
Yes.
So, like, I had my fair share, but we did end the trip in San Diego, where we were able to go to a Padres game on July 4th. There was nothing more American than that July 4th, and just absolute beauty of an area, and a lot of people that like hockey down there. They were all more than willing to talk about hockey, and they knew that the draft was in LA, and it's really fun to see how far hockey culture has evolved in SoCal.
Oh, that's awesome. San Diego too. Heaven on earth. What is it today? 80 degrees and sunny every single day. Welcome to San Diego, California. Welcome to the show. This is the first time, Marco, since you and I joined forces that it feels like we have now reached the peak off season. Like we are now in the off season. The draft is over. The first week of free agent frenzy is now in our rear view. And it begs the obvious question in my mind anyway, and I think we share this here, is Ken Hughes done? In the aftermath of shoring up some depth moves with Sammy Blais, getting a veteran backup goaltender, I like that they poached these guys from winning AHL programs to bring them to see what they could do with the Habs, with the Laval Rocket, but there is still unfinished business in the minds and eyes of most Canadian fans. How can he be done when they don't have a second line? So let's start there. Do you believe in the aftermath of acquiring the big one in Zachary Bolduc for Logan Mailloux? Before that, it was the Noah Dobson acquisition. That the Montreal Canadiens general manager is now done, Marco?
I don't think he's done it all. I think that Kent Hughes has a couple of things cooking right now, at least from what I've been told. He is still firmly in the hunt for a top 6 forward. Firmly in the hunt for a top 6 forward. That has not changed.
Okay. Have you heard any names, brother? Have you heard any names yet? I've heard one, the Cirelli out of Tampa Bay.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of digging on that. I'm not 100% sure that there's a lot of smoke to that.
Okay.
In the sense that, and like, again, like this could happen, obviously, but from what I'm being told, I mean, just Tampa Bay to trade a guy like Cirelli would take just such a massive step back if they're not getting a good enough piece in return. And are the Canadians really in a position to give that good enough piece, right? And then this becomes the debate, right? Because then we had the same discussion with Dobson like 2 months ago where I was like, well, if they're going to try to trade for Dobson, they're probably going to have to give, a major roster piece to get him. It just so happened that Dobson was an RFA in the making with, arbitration and some form of leverage to push his way out of the New York Islanders, and it worked out that way. But Cirelli is extended for, I think, another 6 years.
Right.
And I believe has good trade protection. I just have to double check that. But essentially, that's a tough one for me because, first of all, that would be the perfect fit. Let's just when you're looking at 2C for the Montreal Canadiens, Cirelli is like exactly what the doctor ordered. But the issue at hand is if Tampa Bay trades Cirelli, who do they have in their lineup that's going to be their 2C? Right? Stamkos is gone. Point is playing top. You're not going to move up Nick Paul. You're not going to move up Geeky. There's no centers available. And they can't even play the offer sheet game because they don't have their picks to play that game. So I don't see how Tampa and Montreal make any sense unless Tampa is willing to take a serious step back.
And so let me tie in the Jordan Kyrou with the Anthony Cirelli stuff when we ask the question, is Ken Hughes done? Like, how are you going to get either of those pieces? So let's move on from Kyrou, right? Like,
well,
I mean, is there a portion of the fan base that is ready to say goodbye to, let me just throw out a name, Juraj Slafkovsky? Is there a portion of the fan base? Because, like, in order to get a talent like this, like you said, he's a perfect fit. You're going to have to give a substantial piece from your core that we don't really talk about, that I believe is going to be required to get a key piece, because everybody in your sister knows Ken Hughes is coming looking for the 2C. They just don't give them away and say, listen, here's a favor. You owe me one down the line. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that the Canadiens have what Tampa needs. Like, again, Cirelli's got another 5 years left on his deal. The good thing is, like, obviously his age, he's 27 years old, right?
Like, like you said, he's peak, bro.
He's peak. Prime. But the thing with him now is that he has a full no trade clause that kicked in as of July 1st. So just seems a little off. Like it's the same scenario as like Kyrou, right? Where it made sense to have those discussions before, and even and when I say made sense, I mean made fundamental sense on paper. I don't think that the two teams are good trading partners. Plus, trading your number 2 center within the division, ask Buffalo how that turns out. That's not that you don't want to do that. So I'm a little iffy on that, especially with how thin they are on D as is now, because they've lost a couple of guys. Sergachev gone as well. Perbix just left. So they're not exactly where they were before, and you now have to potentially factor in losing Cirelli. Like, at that point, if you lose Cirelli, I mean, like, no offense, but time to retool, right? That my 2 cents. Problem is they traded first round picks until like 2027, so they're kind of a little bit of a pickle there. But to me, you'd have to give them like a significant piece. Like, there is no way, and this, again, this is not a trade rumor. This is just me saying there is no way you're getting Anthony Cirelli out of Tampa Bay without giving them Michael Hage at least. Right. So with a roster player, like maybe a Kirby Doc, and then like a bunch of futures. And even then, why would Tampa bite on that?
Exactly.
They're not in a cap crunch necessarily right now. Like, they could afford it. They have 1.1 million in cap space right now with all their guys signed. Like, they're ready to go into this to start the season. And the only way you would move a guy like Cirelli, who's making 6.2 million, which is frankly a steal.
What a steal. Yeah.
A steal. I don't see why Tampa would do that. Like, if you're going to move out a guy because you're worried about, like, with them, why did you acquire Bjorkstrand at 5.4 million?
Bro, their window of winning is still open. And like, if you look at the Eastern Conference, okay, everybody chases the Florida Panthers. In my opinion, the next best team in the conference is still Tampa Bay, with Carolina right on their heels. So, like, when I saw this over the weekend, it made pretty much little sense. And then Marco expands on it, talks about the no trade clause, talks about how cheap he is compared to his performance. It makes now zero sense. So what about this second line? What does the second line look like? Here we are into July talking about an incomplete second line. Where does Ken Hughes begin to address the need for this? the potential of Zach Bolduc playing up the lineup exists, but he's not penciled in as the second line guy today. At least I don't think he is. So walk me through the construction of a second line.
Yeah. Well, I will say for Canadiens fans, I've done a lot of back and forth with a lot of St. Louis reporters over the last week, just kind of talking, first of all, explaining to them what they've just received in Logan Mailloux, who I think is going to be a really promising D for them, but also looking into what the Canadiens just acquired in Zach Bolduc. I have always gone to say I see him as a Hagel, and people are going to be like, whoa, that's a lot of expectation. Sure. But does anybody remember Hagel at 21? Hagel was like a development camp invite at the age of 20, right? This is a guy that did not have the trajectory that people thought he was going to have and just took off because elite hockey IQ, relentless motor, and great core skills. And Bolduc has all of that. I'm not saying Bolduc's going to be an 80-point player, but I think that when this guy hits, he's going to be a pain in the ass second liner in the same ilk as a Max Pacioretty at the time, where he's got a nose for the net, has a really strong shot, and can play two-way so that you can even use him on the penalty kill down the line. And this is a guy that was a pure offensive player in the queue when he played for the Quebec Ramparts. So I see a lot of really good evolution, and I think the best thing to ever happen to him was getting coached for one season under Jim Montgomery, who is, in my opinion, one of the best coaches in the NHL. So I really like Bolduc, and I'm not sleeping on the idea of him eventually being on the second line on a permanent basis before the end of next season. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that you want to give fans something to be excited about. You want to, first of all, have him earn that spot, but also you don't want to leave a situation with Demidov where the second line would be Kirby Dach, Demidov, and Line A, right? Not necessarily something that's going to breed confidence. Though I personally believe that Kirby Dach has a lot to play for right now from what I've been told. The fire has been lit under him. The comments made by Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes at the end of season presser grabbed hold. And so I'm of the ilk that if the Canadiens can't find a number 2 center this summer, which is going to be the case, my honest opinion, I think if they do get a number 2 center, just given I don't think they're going to hoodwink anybody like they did with the Noah Dobson situation, which in the end I believe is a really good trade for both teams. But I don't think you're going to be able to extract a number 2 center right now without giving up a major piece from your lineup. I just don't. There's too many teams looking for one. So many teams still have cap space, and you have Michael Granlund going for $7 million, in the upper 30s of his, exactly, right.
33 years old. He's a $7 million AAV for the next 3 years.
Yeah, and you saw the same thing with Brock Nelson, $7.5 million. So that's how much teams are willing to pay for tweener second line centers. So what do you think is going to happen if you have to trade for one? And so, one of the other things, and I'll bring this up, one of the other things now is this rumor about how Mason McTavish is unhappy in Anaheim.
Oh my gosh.
I've done some digging myself on that subject. Actually, a shout out to Andrew Knoll out in California, who also contributes to RG Media, who is basically just where is this coming from? Yeah, McTavish is happy. They've already talked to him about his role next year. They brought in Michael Granlund as an additional top 6 forward. Doesn't necessarily have to play center, but having that luxury of being able to swap him in and out is good. They have Carlson, Strome.
Oh, dude, they're stacked.
McTavish.
Yeah, they got a lot of guys. Yeah.
And now everyone's saying, oh, well, they drafted McQueen.
Exactly.
Roger McQueen. Not Lightning, but I mean, they're going to be the same person now.
Yeah.
Not having, by the way, they have that picture at Disneyland when you walk in.
Oh, cool.
Roger with number 95. It's actually quite hilarious.
Smart play.
But the key indicator here is there's this thread of offer sheet. Anaheim has $29 million in cap or $20 million in cap space. They're going to match whatever. And Mason McTavish, an offer sheet necessary to get even Mason McTavish to sign would have to be upwards of $9.5 million to $10 million.
Yeah.
Which, if you're the Anaheim Ducks, okay, sign, match.
Yeah, done.
It would be the equivalent of Marc Bergevin trying to offer sheet Sebastian Aho and Carolina just being haha, We're just going to put in our calendar in 6 days that we're going to match. Like, see you then. Like, it's not that big a deal, right? So I don't think like this scenario, like if there's a threat for offer sheets in the NHL right now, it's Bowen Byram. It's not Mason McTavish. It's not Dostal. It's so the thing to understand, I just want fans to because I've done my digging. Pat Verbeek is never in a rush to negotiate with his RFAs. We've seen this in the past, time and time again. You know, when they become available for he could sign Pavel Mintyukov to a long-term contract right now. He could sign Dostal to a long-term contract right now. He could sign McTavish to a long-term contract right now. He is in zero rush because only GMs that have something to fear are in a rush. In his case, he's like, we have the money. We know the player wants to be here. What's the right? Enjoy your summer. We'll convene with your agent in like August and we'll have this settled down. And that's the thing, right? So people will look at the relationship that he had with Zegras and how those negotiations went down, because that also went down to the wire and apparently wasn't very fruitful of a conversation.
Yeah.
The difference is that Verbeek drafted McTavish. Verbeek loves McTavish, right? It was one of his first picks. Mintyukov. It was McTavish, then Mintyukov. So like those are his core. These are the guys that he's decided to build his team around. McTavish has done nothing, especially with the way he ended last season, to be on the outside looking in. And I don't think McTavish, who just seen his club add Kreider, add Granlund, and will probably add more because they want to be more competitive. I don't see why now he would be dissatisfied when the team is about to take a nice kick in the Pacific Division, which in my opinion is probably the weakest in the NHL.
Right. And so, like, to wrap this up, then, when we talk about and ask the question, is Ken Hughes done? The second line remains an unsolved puzzle with the understanding, and maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, but you saw Kirby Dach and Brassard during development camp before the Young Bucks took the ice. You also saw Demidov out there. They were both doing kind of dipsy-doos and doing their drills, working with speed, ripping shots. And is Ken Hughes done? I don't think he's done because Kirby Dach is still here. And I firmly believe they're going to try to incorporate this guy. Like you said, they put Kirby Dach on blast for a reason. Light a fire under this guy's tuchus. Let's see what he does about it. So to me, that is a job that we need some sort of answer to. Yeah. And I'm here to watch. I'm here to watch for the third time to see if Kirby Dach can catch.
So two things on that. I think they do strongly believe that Kirby Dach is going to bounce back. And I say this with respect, but I think it would be hard not to bounce back from the performances we saw at the beginning of last season. I think like if he comes in
off the ground floor, man, it's not harsh. It's
I think the difference is like exactly. Like we said, the fire has been lit. I will add one tidbit though. There is one free agent at center that's still available that I know the Canadiens have expressed interest on, and that's Evgeny Kuznetsov.
Okay, so I was hesitant to bring his name up, because of the obvious Demidov connection. Reading through RG Media and other outlets that Demidov carried this guy around, that he was more of an anchor than he was a spark plug.
Okay, so this is the way I will present it. Fans that watch obviously have an opinion. Fans that don't obviously read up on it. I'm not the gospel. My viewings, because I watched maybe like 15 ska games last year.
Yeah.
Really, really good thinker, strong with the puck, just like not interested on the defensive side of the game. And I just don't know if that commitment would come back at the NHL. Obviously, there's less of a worry when it comes to back checking in the KHL, right?
Yeah.
And some of those rosters, I'm pretty sure, have 8 defensemen. So like you're still like running those 4 pairings, and you're fine with your defense. But I think when you look at Kuznetsov, there are 10 teams that have expressed interest in him. I don't know if those 10 teams are still in the game. He's an over 35 player, so that would have to be like a bonus structured, almost like you saw Claude Giroux sign or Corey Perry sign. So like smaller base salary with a bonus. But that brings up multiple other questions, right? So if you like I know that Kuznetsov is someone that the Canadiens have approached. Other teams have too. From what I understand, Kuznetsov camp is still thinking about it, unsure about the fit, but like the idea of playing with Demidov. But Obviously, there's a guy in the later part of his career. Do you want to go to a team that's going to be more competitive and is going to be pushing for a cup? Because there are a lot of cup contending teams that could use a cheaper guy to play a top 9 role. But the Canadiens, like I said, I think it would make a lot of sense for him. At the same time, it gives Kirby Dach a little bit of breathing room, right? Because it wouldn't be like seen as the savior. You kind of have a stopgap in the middle, and it gives Michael Hage an extra year to, get stronger, relax, grow.
But where's Kirby Dach's mind at though? Like, is Kirby Dach right now thinking to himself, "All right, I'm going to win this job," and then he comes into work and who's in the locker? Kuznetsov. Oh, I guess I can't win this job.
Yeah,
it could be a little bit of a mind belief, maybe. No,
I think if you're Kirby Dach, if you're the Montreal Canadiens with Kirby Dach at this point, with the way they spoke about him, and again, with respect, right? This is a professional athlete that is giving, but I think with what's going on, they don't want to give him anything. Like, he was anointed the second line center when he was drafted, or when he was traded for at the draft. So I think at this point, having depth in that situation creates internal competition. Internal competition, in my opinion, and I've never played professional sports, but even in my like semi-professional career, like any form of internal competition the cream will rise to the top. Players will surpass themselves, push themselves, and I think that's what's needed right now, because there was none of that in the past years, right? It was just a slew of bottom 6 players and then the top line. So I think by creating that internal competition, it would be good. A guy like Kuznetsov could be interesting in that regard if surrounded, right? Like, I would put a Zachary Bolduc with an Evgeny Kuznetsov personally, right? Like, if you had a Demidov, Kuznetsov, Patrick Laine line, pigs, that would be like a negative 60 goals against per 60. Like, it would just be
super
like
slow.
Not slow. It just defensively would be, and I'm not saying Demidov's bad defensively. It's just,
you don't think that trio would be slow? Laine is not a fleet of foot here.
Yeah, well, look, when it comes to Laine, the only thing I will say is I don't look at his skating from last year as a
defining moment.
Yeah, no, not even. I don't think that's his skating. I don't think that's his top end skating. This is a guy who did not skate last summer, who almost blew out his knee. Yeah, and so, like, I'm going to leave that alone. With a full summer of training, I'd like to see what he can do.
All right,
but I will say the Canadiens are far from done, and I expect them to be in discussions because they're also over the salary cap.
Yes, that's a fact. That part we can agree on. I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong, because I think they're kind of done without knowing Kirby Dach. I think Kirby Dach might be their mission, but I hope Marco's on the right side of history here. Stay tuned to the show to find out.